Imagine standing on the banks of the Nile, where the river's ancient waters whisper secrets older than time itself. The year is 2025, and in the heart of Cairo, a city that breathes history, discovery is about to unravel the mysteries of a faith that has shaped civilizations. My name is Dr. Elias Moreau, a scholar of religious history, and I've spent my life chasing the shadows of forgotten truths. Today I invite you to join me on a journey into the past, to a hidden chamber beneath the sands of Egypt, where a collection of ancient texts banned, suppressed, and erased from the annals of Christianity waits us. These are the forgotten scrolls of Alexandria. Their story is not just a tale of parchment and ink, but a revelation of the human soul's search for the divine. What are these scrolls? Why were they hidden? And what do they mean for us today? In a world hungry for meaning, let's step into the darkness and find out. It began with a rumor, a whisper passed down through generations of Coptic monks, that beneath the ancient city of Alexandria lay a secret archive, a vault of forbidden scriptures deemed too dangerous for the eyes of the faithful. I had heard of it in passing, in dusty archives and late-night conversations with colleagues. But it wasn't until I stumbled upon a 4th century letter in a Parisian library that the rumor became an obsession. The letter, penned by a monk named Athanasius, not the famous bishop, but a lesser-known scribe, spoke of a chamber sealed beneath the Coptic quarter, where texts rejected by the early church were preserved by those who believed they held divine truths. "Let these words be guarded," Athanasius wrote. "For though the world may reject them, the Spirit speaks through many voices." Those words haunted me. What truths could be so profound, so unsettling, that they were buried for centuries? I had to know. My quest led me to the Coptic Museum in Cairo, a labyrinth of artifacts where the past feels alive. The curator, Father Shenouda, a frail man with eyes that seemed to see beyond the veil of time, was reluctant to help. "Some doors are meant to stay closed, Dr. Moreau," he warned, his voice a mix of reverence and fear. But after months of persistence, he relented, guiding me to a forgotten wing of the museum, sealed since the 19th century. There, behind a crumbling sandstone wall, I found it a hidden seam, just as Athanasius's letter described. With trembling hands, I pressed against the stone. And with a soft groan, the wall gave way, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. My lantern's flickering light cast eerie shadows as I stepped into the unknown, the air growing colder, the silence heavier with each step. At the bottom, I found a chamber untouched by time, shelves lined with papyrus scrolls, clay tablets, and leather-bound codices, our edges frayed, but their secrets intact. This was no ordinary archive. This was the Alexandrian cache, a treasure trove of forbidden wisdom. For weeks, I lived in that chamber, cataloging the texts with the care of a pilgrim handling sacred relics. There were dozens of manuscripts each, a voice from the early centuries of Christianity, a time when faith was not a monolith, but a chorus of competing visions. Among them were the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the Acts of Thomas, the Secret Book of John, and a fragmented work called the Testament of the 12. These were not mere apocrypha, stories left out of the Bible for lack of space. These were texts that challenged the very foundations of what we call orthodoxy. Texts that spoke of divine mysteries, human struggles, and a faith far more diverse than the one we know today. Let me take you through them one by one and show you why they matter, not just to scholars like me, but to anyone who seeks to understand the soul of humanity. First, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, written in Coptic, on brittle papyrus, its ink faded but its words alive with power. This was not the Mary of the New Testament, a repentant sinner or silent follower. This was Mary the Visionary, a disciple entrusted with teachings Jesus shared with no one else. In one passage, she recounts a vision of the soul's ascent through celestial realms, facing challenges from cosmic powers who seek to bind it to the material world. "The kingdom is within you," she quotes Jesus, "and to know yourself is to know God." I paused, my breath catching. These words echoed the mysticism of the East, the philosophy of Plato, yet they were spoken by a woman in a world that rarely gave women a voice. Why was this gospel excluded? Its emphasis on inner enlightenment, on personal revelation over institutional authority would have been a threat to the early church, which sought to unify its message under male leadership. Mary's authority, her role as a teacher, clashed with a growing patriarchy that favored Peter and Paul. To include her gospel would have been to admit that women could lead, that truth could come from unexpected voices, so it was silenced next. The Acts of Thomas, a vivid narrative of the Apostle Thomas's missionary journey to India. Unlike the canonical Acts of the Apostles, which focus on the spread of Christianity in the Roman world, this text is a tapestry of miracles and mysticism. Thomas raises the dead, speaks with serpents, and performs wonders that blend Christian faith with the spiritual traditions of the East. In one striking scene, he encounters a dragon who claims to be a servant of God, testing Thomas's faith with riddles about the nature of the divine. The text's syncretism, its willingness to weave Christian teachings with Indian and Persian mysticism, was breathtaking. But it was also dangerous. The early church, striving for a unified doctrine, would have seen such hybridity as a risk. A dilution of the gospel's purity, to include the Acts of Thomas, would have been to embrace a Christianity that looked outward, that engaged with other cultures rather than conquering them. Instead, it was cast aside, labeled apocryphal, stories relegated to the margins. Then there was the secret book of John, a Gnostic text that turned everything I thought I knew about Christianity upside down. It's written in a poetic, almost otherworldly style. It describes a cosmic hierarchy of divine beings, with the God of the Old Testament cast as a flawed demiurge, ignorant of the true, transcendent divine. Above this demiurge is a higher God, pure and unknowable, who sends Jesus as a messenger of light to awaken humanity to its divine spark. I sat back, stunned. This was not the Christianity of Sunday sermons. This was a theology that challenged the very nature of God, that dared to question the foundations of monotheism. No wonder it was condemned as heretical at the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE. To include such a text would have been to invite chaos, undermine the authority of the bishops who sought to define God in clear, unified terms. Yet its vision of a divine realm beyond the material world spoke to a universal human longing, a desire to transcend the mundane and touch the eternal. The most enigmatic text was the Testament of the 12, a fragmented dialogue among the apostles after Jesus' resurrection. Here they debate the nature of salvation. Is it for all or only for the obedient? Peter argues for a narrow path, emphasizing law and discipline. John speaks of love as the key to redemption. Mary Magdalene, again, insists that salvation comes through inner knowledge. The text's pluralism, its suggestion that multiple paths to God might coexist, was revolutionary. It painted a picture of early Christianity as a conversation, not a decree, but such openness was intolerable to a church seeking to consolidate power. The Testament of the 12, with its unresolved questions, would have been a liability in a world that demanded certainty. I could almost hear the bishops at Nicaea, their voices tense with urgency, declaring it unfit for the canon. As I studied these texts, I began to see the world they came from, a world of vibrant diversity, where Christianity was not one faith, but many, in the 2nd and 3rd centuries. Communities from Jerusalem to Antioch to Alexandria held differing views on Jesus' nature, the role of women, and the path to salvation. The Alexandrian cache was a snapshot of that diversity, a testament to a time when faith was fluid, contested, and fiercely debated. But by the 4th century, under the shadow of Emperor Constantine, the Church faced a choice: unify or fracture. The Council of Nicaea, convened in 325 CE, was the turning point. Bishops, backed by imperial power, defined orthodoxy, codifying the New Testament and condemning texts that deviated from it. The Gospel of Mary was deemed heretical for its elevation of a woman's voice. The Acts of Thomas was rejected for its esoteric tone. The secret book of John was branded Gnostic, a label that became synonymous with danger. The Testament of the 12, with its open-ended debates, was simply too ambiguous for a church craving control. But why were these texts hidden rather than destroyed? I found clues in the margins of the scrolls notes from monks who believed these writings, though controversial, held divine truths. One note, in Greek, read, "These words are sacred, though the world may not understand." The monks of Alexandria, renowned for their intellectual courage, must have seen value in preserving these texts, even if they could not be taught openly. Perhaps they believed that future generations, less bound by the politics of their time, would find wisdom in these forbidden voices. They hid the scrolls not out of fear, but out of hope, trusting that one day, someone like me would find them and listen. The cultural significance of these texts was profound. They revealed a Christianity that was not isolated but interconnected, engaging with the philosophies and spiritualities of its time. The Gospel of Mary echoed Platonic ideas of the soul's ascent, suggesting that early Christians were in dialogue with Greek thought. The Acts of Thomas incorporated elements of Indian spirituality, showing a faith that crossed borders and cultures. The Secret Book of John drew on Jewish mysticism, reimagining the Genesis story in ways that resonated with ancient esoteric traditions. These texts were bridges, evidence of a Christianity that once embraced diversity before being confined to a rigid canon. They reminded me that faith, at its core, is a human endeavor, shaped by the cultures it touches. The spiritual resonance of the scrolls was even more compelling. Each text challenged me to rethink the nature of faith. The Gospel of Mary's focus on inner transformation spoke to a truth that transcends time. That salvation is not just about following rules, but about knowing oneself as a reflection of the divine. "The kingdom is within you," Mary said. Words that echo in modern spiritual movements, where people seek meaning beyond institutions. The Secret Book of John, with its cosmic vision, offered a glimpse of the divine as vast and unknowable, inviting us to look beyond the material world. The Acts of Thomas, with its tales of miracles and cross-cultural encounters, reminded me that the divine is universal, speaking through every culture, every story. And the Testament of the 12, with its debates about salvation, challenged me to ask, what if God's plan is bigger than any one doctrine? What if truth is not a single path, but a mosaic of possibilities? The question that haunted me most was why these texts were excluded. The answer lay in a mix of theology, politics, and power. The early church faced external threats, Roman persecution, rival religions, and internal divisions. A unified canon was a tool for survival, a way to present a cohesive message to a skeptical world. Texts that challenged apostolic authority, like the Gospel of Mary, were liabilities. Texts that embraced esoteric knowledge, like the Secret Book of John, risked confusing new converts. Texts that celebrated cultural diversity, like the Acts of Thomas, threatened the church's goal of uniformity. And texts like the Testament of the 12, with their open-ended questions, could have fueled schisms in a faith already fractured. The role of women was a recurring issue. Mary Magdalene's prominence in her gospel and the active role of women in the Acts of Thomas clashed with the church's growing emphasis on male clergy. By the 4th century, as Christianity became the religion of the Roman Empire, patriarchal norms solidified. To include texts that elevated women would have been to challenge the social order, a risk the church was unwilling to take. Politics played a part too. Constantine's patronage gave bishops unprecedented power to shape doctrine. Texts that aligned with imperial values, obedience, hierarchy, uniformity, were favored, while those that encouraged independent thought or mystical exploration were sidelined. Fear was a factor as well. The Secret Book of John's radical cosmology could have alienated believers. The Testament of the 12's pluralism might have sown doubt. By excluding these texts, the church sought to protect its flock, but at what cost? As I prepared to present the Alexandrian cache at an international symposium in Oxford, I grappled with its relevance to our modern world. We live in an era of religious pluralism, where people seek meaning beyond traditional institutions. The Gospel of Mary's emphasis on inner enlightenment resonates with mindfulness movements. With those who meditate to find peace within, the Acts of Thomas's cross-cultural encounters speak to a globalized world where borders blur and cultures collide. The Secret Book of John's Cosmic Vision appeals to those exploring spirituality beyond organized religion. From New Age seekers to philosophers pondering the nature of existence, and the Testament of the 12, with its vision of multiple paths to salvation, challenges us to rethink our divisions, religious, ideological, cultural, in a world torn apart by conflict. These texts also raise difficult questions. If the early church suppressed voices like Mary Magdalene's, what other truths have we lost? If the Testament of the 12 suggests that salvation might be universal, can modern religions embrace such openness? If the Secret Book of John challenges our view of God, can we expand our understanding of the divine without losing faith? The Alexandrian Cache is a call to humility, a reminder that the Bible, though sacred to millions, is a human construct, shaped by historical forces. To acknowledge these forgotten texts is not to diminish Scripture, but to enrich it, to recognize the complexity of early Christian thought and the diversity of voices that once defined it. At the symposium, I stood before a packed auditorium, the weight of the scrolls heavy in my hands. Scholars, theologians, and spiritual seekers listened in silence as I read from the Gospel of Mary, its vision of the soul's ascent drawing gasps. The Acts of Thomas's tales of miracles sparked debates, some marveling at its boldness, others questioning its authenticity. The Secret Book of John's cosmology provoked awe and unease, its radical ideas challenging the foundations of faith. And the Testament of the 12, with its pluralistic vision, divided the room. Some called it heretical, others a beacon of hope. I ended with a challenge. These texts were hidden not because they lacked truth, but because they challenged power. They remind us that faith is a mosaic, woven from countless voices. To ignore them is to ignore our spiritual heritage. To embrace them is to ask what is truth and who decides it. The room erupted in applause, but not all were convinced. Some theologians accused me of undermining Scripture. Others praised me for reviving lost wisdom. In the weeks that followed, the Alexandrian Cache became a global phenomenon. The texts were translated, published, and studied, their words sparking debates in churches, on social media, and in academic halls. They challenged believers to reconsider the role of women, the nature of salvation, and the boundaries of faith. They inspired seekers to look beyond dogma, to find truth in the margins. Years later, I returned to the Coptic Museum, a pilgrimage site for those drawn to the forbidden texts. The chamber, once hidden, was now an archive, its scrolls preserved under glass. I had retired, but the legacy of the Alexandrian Cache lived on. Churches began to discuss Mary Magdalene's role, inspired by her gospel. Interfaith dialogues drew on the Acts of Thomas to bridge East and West. Philosophers and mystics found solace in the Secret Book of John's Cosmic Vision. And the Testament of the 12 became a rallying cry for those seeking a more inclusive spirituality, a faith that embraces rather than divides. The forgotten scrolls of Alexandria began as a whisper in the dark, a rumor of truths buried by time. They ended as a revelation, a reminder that the divine speaks through many voices, and to listen is to grow closer to the sacred. These texts are more than relics. They are mirrors, reflecting our own questions about truth, faith, and meaning. They challenge us to seek, as the Scottish monk Stuart once said, "For thee shall find." Will you dismiss them as heresy, or will you hear the wisdom they offer? The choice is yours, but the truth is never far if you dare to look. The forgotten scrolls of Alexandria are not just a discovery. They are a call to awaken, to question, to believe.